Well, the next speaker, I'm very pleased to say, is Betsy Keller, who comes from Ithaca College in beautiful New York State. Betsy.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay? Back there? Great. Well, once again, thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I'm very honored to do this, and I think it's critically important that we have a little bit of a dialogue about this topic, in particular, activity guidelines to avoid symptom flares in ME/CFS side. I feel crappy 24 hours a day, whatever you want to call this illness. There are activity guidelines that we should be paying attention to that could be useful for you. And so I'm very pleased to be talking about that. I would like to, in advance, thank two of my colleagues, Stacy Stevens from the Workwell Foundation in California and Barb Bellier from the Physical Therapy Department at Ithaca College, for sharing some of their images with me that you'll see in this presentation. So what I want to talk about today involves a lot of slides. So I'm going to move quickly, and I know you're all, once again, like yesterday, post-absorptive. You have that lunch in you. You now have a little snack in you, hopefully a little caffeine. But I'm going to move right along here and make this a little participatory, too. But before I begin talking about activity guidelines, I want to talk about what I call energy currency. And basically, that's how you produce energy. It's a little sort of summary on how we produce energy and what is working and what is not working in ME/CFS patients. I also want to talk about, more specifically, about the role of core stability. Raise your hand if you have any idea what I'm talking about. Who knows what core stability is? Not very many. Wonderful. Thank you. It was a vigorous hand. Good. Okay. I want to talk about structured physical activity and how you can incorporate this into your daily lives. And then a reminder about energy conservation, and I know that you're all very sensitive to that, and you probably could help me with some additional tips beyond the 10 tips that I have. So to begin with, your energy producing processes, I'm going to break them down into 3 energy producing processes. And one I will call the short-term anaerobic energy producing process. And now if the fire alarm in this building went off and you believed it and you decided I need to get the heck out of here, that's the energy that would get you up out of the seat and up those stairs. It's immediate stores in your muscles available to you on demand, and it burns out very quickly. Little longer term anaerobic energy producing system produces energy for you also very quickly, not as fast as the first one, but it lasts a little longer. It doesn't burn out as quickly. A byproduct of that is something you've all heard about, lactic acid, and that would get you out the door and down the block. Okay, 30, 45 seconds of high intensity effort, maybe a little bit longer. And then we have your aerobic energy producing system. Right now, that's how you're producing most of the energy that you're using to sit there and hopefully stay awake during this presentation. And it's also the predominant energy system when most of us go out for a jog or a walk or we go swimming. And for you folks with ME/CFS, this is not the energy system of choice. It's the energy system we've run our lives by for forever. However, this illness, for whatever reason, and we don't understand it, that's what we're all trying to figure out, this energy system has gone awry for some reason. And the bottom line is that when you do aerobic exercise, you do not recover normally from that. So what I'm going to tell you for the next few minutes is not based in studies. There are no intervention studies or training studies that have been done to support what I'm going to say in ME/CFS patients, or have been done well and appropriately, such that I would feel confident in sharing that data with you. However, I do know bioenergetics, or how your energy systems work, and in particular, the studies that have been done with the 2-day cardiopulmonary exercise test have informed us greatly and taught us what energy systems are not working in ME/CFS patients. So the guidelines I'm going to offer to you today are based on that knowledge, what to stay away from, and how to maybe rearrange things in your daily life to recover in a way that you're able to recover and not exacerbate your symptoms by trying to do work using that aerobic energy system, which will cause post-exertional malaise. So these are data from Stacy Stevens' group, and real quickly, these are 30 subjects who did 5 to 10 minutes of treadmill exercise, and they tracked how long it took them to get back to their pre-test baseline, and 75% of these 30 patients took 3 days or longer to recover back to their pre-test baseline. And I'm sure you all can relate to this. And I also don't need to spend too much time talking about post-exertional malaise. Those of you who are in the audience with this illness have your own set of delightful symptoms that you experience when you are post-exertional. I tend to call it post-exertional symptom exacerbation, but it is something, it's your set of symptoms that become aggravated, exacerbated in a big way when you exceed your ability to produce energy and recover from that. So Lucinda Bateman is a CFS fibromyalgia doc in the United States. She has a strong patient load, and she has been studying this and treating this disease for a lot of years. And I think this statement from her is apropos, that treating post-exertional malaise once it happens is much more difficult than preventing it. So her recommendations are to prevent it at all costs and do so by preemptive rest. So she advises patients to rest on a schedule. Don't wait until you must rest. Rest on a schedule and be religious about that. And secondly, to pace yourself and to limit activities to levels that do not exacerbate your symptoms. And so that's kind of the foundation of some of the things I'm going to talk about with the rest of this discussion. So I need you to be thinking a little differently about how you're going to do the work of your daily lives and not how you used to do it, because that's critically important. You used to be an aerobic animal, and you're not that anymore. You're an anaerobic animal, and that works for you. You may not like it because it forces you to do work a little bit differently, so we have to stop focusing on the past, and we have to start focusing on what works for you so that you have an improved quality of life, and you can still get things done and not exacerbate your symptoms. So the traditional approach to how you did things is not going to work well for you, but something, for example, like yoga or Tai Chi and other examples I'll give you in a few minutes might work better for you. So I'm going to talk about structured physical activity and how to incorporate that into your daily lives. And structured physical activity is activity that is restorative for you and not damaging. And it's functional. It helps you to do your activities of daily living. And it's going to be done in such a way that you recruit that short-term anaerobic energy system, not that aerobic energy system. And your goal is to maintain an improved range of motion, or improve your range of motion. Unless you're one of those people who's hypermobile, then maybe we don't want to spend a lot of time improving range of motion. But to improve your strength to do functional activities of daily living, and as we'll soon learn about, improve your core stability, because that's key to energy efficiency. So, core stability. Anybody want to tell me what that is?
It's the muscles around your inner core. It's the strength there that's holding your spine up and your tummy in.
Pretty darn good. That's great. So what she said was it's the muscles around your inner core. So I'm going to simplify that. I'm going to say from your neck to your hips, your trunk area, front, back, and sides. It's all the musculature that supports the alignment of your spine. That's your core. All right? So I want you to think about your core in the context of a strand of uncooked spaghetti. All right? Uncooked spaghetti, that's your core. All right? You hold that strand of uncooked spaghetti up, and it just stays stiff like a pencil, right? Now, if I were able to, and I could cook just the middle third of that strand of spaghetti, if I held it up by the middle third, what would happen to it? It would just fold up in half, right? Well, that's what happens when your core is not strong. So the way that you compensate for that is you do a lot of extra work with your legs. If you're trying to reach for something out of the cupboard, you do a lot of extra work with your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists to try to stabilize yourself, and you unnecessarily stress your extremity joints and muscles because your core is weak. So we have to get rid of the floppy core. We have to have a stable core so that there's far less work that's being done by the extremities. All right, and that's what we're going to focus on here. So I describe the core this way, which is not going to make a lot of sense. It's a complex interplay of core structures like your muscles, your ligaments, and your tendons. and it provides proximal stability to allow for distal mobility, whatever that means. Basically, it means what I just said. The spaghetti strand, the strand of spaghetti is taut and tight. It's not flopping around, and your arms and legs don't have to do as much work, and the risk of injuring your extremity joints is far less. So here is a lovely, straight, normally aligned spine. It has its normal curves in it, which are by design supposed to be there. Little curve here, little curve here. And that's what that's our mantra right there. That's what we want. But in reality, oftentimes, especially as gravity starts to take over, get a little bit older, maybe we get a little tired, and gravity starts to win the war at the end of the day or at the end of the years, we start to look more like this. So here we have the normally aligned spine, and the weight of the head, about 12 pounds sitting on that spine. Not a hefty load to manage, right? But in a head forward position, if you do the physics, if you want to do the physics, the reality is with your head out here in front of your base of support, which is this nice spine here, the weight that you're actually having to manage is about 32 pounds, considerably more than what it is if your head's aligned over your spine. And if you have a more extreme forward chin and head tilt, then the weight that you're actually carrying around on top of your shoulders is about 42 pounds or even worse. So if you're walking around this way all day long, you are doing a tremendous amount of work to heft this 42-pound head around. Does that make sense? Right. So we need to get this head back here. Okay, let's give it a whirl. Same thing if you're sitting down. So this all applies to alignment regardless of what position you're in. And even if you're sitting and slouching in a chair, there's a good way to slouch where you keep your spine aligned. I shouldn't say slouch, but schlep or rest or whatever. So for example, here we have a nicely aligned spine. We've got the ear over the shoulder, over the hip, okay? And that's what we'd love to see. And if you're standing up, we'd like to see the hip over the knee, over the ankle bone, all right? But in the seated position, oftentimes we see this, especially when we get tired, and we might overcompensate by kind of thrusting our torso forward and leaning back and arching our back, which is also not so good for us. So we're going to go through a little exercise here where I'm going to teach you how to align your spine and begin to activate the muscles that are important in stabilizing your core. All right, so you can do this lying down, you can do this seated, or you can do this standing. And I would say if you can do it standing, go ahead and stand up, but don't do it right now. Let me just explain the value of doing this first, which is belly breathing or focused breathing or nose breathing. And it always begins, when you're learning to do this, you always begin with this type of breathing, which is breathing in for 4 seconds and breathing out for 6 to 8 seconds. And I will guarantee that for those of you, when you get tense, when you experience pain, when you feel stressed in any way, this is the last thing that you're doing. And if you want to relax your muscles, reduce your pain, this is the first thing you should try to do. This is your first strategy for pain reduction, for relaxation. Because when you shorten your breaths and you reduce the depth of your breath, you actually end up reducing the oxygen delivery to your tissues. And your tissues get oxygen deprived and they can't work well for you. So breathing in 4 seconds and breathing out 6 to 8 seconds means a deep breath in, you fill up those lungs, and then you breathe it out slowly. And you can do that through the rest of my presentation if you like. It's not a difficult thing to do. It's just sort of has to become part of your thing. You just have to it has to become a habit. All right? So it's helpful for all that we do. I did it right before I had to start talking to you folks. Okay. So here are the 5 steps we're going to go through very quickly. We're going to learn how to contract our pelvic floor muscles. All right? Then we're going to learn how to brace our abdominal muscles, raise our rib cage, slide our shoulder blades back and down, and then retract our chin. And by the time I'm done with you, you are going to have straight spines, I promise. So here we go. You ready? All right. So if you choose to stand up, go ahead and stand up. If you want to sit up, if you're lying down, get as straight as you can while you're lying down. All right? We're going to start by contracting the floor. Nobody's standing up. Now, I know there's some people in here who are perfect. Thank you, Anne. All right, let's do this. Okay. So, to find your pelvic floor muscles, they are the base of your spine. So here we have the leaning Tower of Pisa, and as we all know, it's leaning for what reason? Why is it leaning? What's happening down here? It's crumbling, right? So the foundation of your core are your pelvic floor muscles. If you were to look at them from the top down, they look like a hammock of muscles that are all intertwined, and they work quite nicely when they're working. But when we forget they're there, they don't work so well. So the base of your core is your pelvis, and that is the first thing you activate when you try to stabilize your core. So here we go. All right, for women, I might just be able to say Kegel. How many people know a Kegel? Okay, good. Guys don't know Kegel. So if I say raise your jewels, you maybe know what I'm talking about. If I say men, you're walking into a pond of cold water. Okay, cutting off the flow of urine, all the same. It is not a butt squeeze. Okay, you feel the difference? I don't know you're doing it, so you have to just smile if you're doing it, okay? So here we go. We're going to do our Kegel, and we're going to try to even moderate our Kegel a little bit. So pretend your pelvic floor is an elevator, all right? And so I want you to take the elevator from the basement up to the first floor by whatever you want to do, raising your jewels, Kegeling, whatever. It's an invisible exercise. I don't know whether you're doing it or not. You shouldn't have to move. You just kind of do it and smile, all right? And hold it there, all right? And then relax your pelvic floor muscles and let them just go back down to the basement. Okay, now bring your pelvic floor muscles back up to the first floor. Go to the second floor, mezzanine, lingerie, whatever. All right, so that's a little more vigorous contraction right there. And relax a little bit, but not all the way. Take it back down to the first floor. So now you still have some tension in your pelvic floor, but not totally relaxed. And then go back to the lobby or the basement. All right? How many felt the difference from the bottom to the second floor and back down? Okay, good. If you did, you actually found your pelvic floor. So now what I want you to do is I want you to just contract your pelvic floor 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good? Are we good? Did you find it? Awesome. Have it relaxed. You just found the base of your core. So you can sit and relax for the rest of it. Thank you for your participation. All right. So just remember. Yes. Every exercise you do, every activity you do, pushing, pulling, lifting, any kind of strain, stepping up and down off a stair, lifting a garbage bag up, always begins with your pelvic floor contraction. Now, when you were a 2-year-old, you knew that. 3-year-old, 4-year-old. When they sent you to school and they sat you down in a chair for any length of time, your pelvic floor muscles got forgotten, okay? And they sort of just went to bed. So as soon as we started sitting kids down in chairs, they forgot how to align their core. But if you look at how a 2-year-old manages their body, they do a lovely job. So here's step number 2 to find an aligned spine. You're going to draw in, and you can do this seated or standing or lying down as well. You're going to draw in or brace. Now, none of these pictures are what you're going to be doing. I just think they're kind of freaky, especially this one here. I have no idea how this guy does this, but whatever. We're not doing these, okay? If you're an easy way to do this is when you're lying down, but you can do it while you're seated too. Just try to sit up with a nice straight aligned spine right now. All right, close your pelvic floor, contract it. Take your fingers and find your hip bones here and place your fingers just inside your hip bones. All right, now take your belly button and suck it backward toward your spine. And you should feel a band of tightness. You should feel something move. How many of you feel something move when you suck your belly button back to your spine? Wonderful. That is called your transverse abdominis. It is your natural girdle. Okay, it's a big, strong, very deep muscle that runs across here. and it helps to keep your pelvis where it belongs, not tilted forward and not tilted backward. So that's called, again, your transverse abdominis. I call it the TA, and you just figured out how to contract it. So start with your pelvic floor, and then suck your belly button into your spine to contract your TA. And now you've just stabilized your pelvis, so it's in a good position to allow for an aligned spine. And so in this picture, we can see that she's been able to tighten through here. She should still be able to get her hand under her lower back. It shouldn't be pushing her lower back against the ground. So if you're lying down doing this, don't push your lower back. Put your hand underneath there and then tighten your transverse abdominis or suck your belly button into your spine. Does that make sense to everybody? Good. Okay. So typically when I teach people to do this, here's what they do. They get the Kegel thing. They got that down. And I go, okay, transverse abdominis. Suck your belly button into your spine. Okay. All right. So now I have to get them straight, because am I straight? I'm not straight, am I? All right. So the next thing I do is tell them to raise their rib cage. So you want to feel like your ribs are pointing up toward the ceiling. So if you put your hands on your ribs and you actually follow the line of your ribs, you want them to be pointing up this way. And to do that, you actually have to straighten up. All right, you have to straighten the spine up. So contract your pelvic floor, suck your belly button into your spine, raise your rib cage, pretend your rib cage is like an umbrella, and you just open the umbrella. All right? Okay, so now I'm like this. So usually when I have people get to step 3, this point, they do this. They're usually like this. So I still have a little problem, don't I, right? Okay. So the next step, of course, is to deal with that. And here's Superman. He's got a nice umbrella through his rib cage. He's pretty straight. He's doing a Superman exercise, which we'll get to in a minute. This is a Superman exercise. I'm not kidding. This is what we call them, Superman exercises, because you can see she's kind of flying like Superman here. And this is something that ME patients can do with no trouble at all. Lie on the floor, lift your arms and your legs. Usually we start with just one arm and the opposite leg. Don't do it all at once. All right, so I still need to get myself straightened up because I'm kind of like this right now. So I need to take these shoulder blades and I need them to go back and then just drop where they used to live when I was 3 years old. Okay? Not here. They actually used to live back here and just let them hang there. So it shouldn't be forced effort. It should be just up to your ears, roll them back, and then just let them drop into place. Like you have a Superman cape on, which you probably wore when you were 6 years old, kind of pulling you back and down that way very nicely. And so at this point, usually I have people who are like this. So you can probably guess the last step to align your spine is to retract your chin. So put your chin back where it belongs, get it out of the zip code that's, a couple counties over, and bring it back where it belongs so that your ear is over your shoulder and your shoulder is over your hips and your hips are over your knees and your knees are over your ankles. Does that make sense? So if you like, try it one last time. We're going to put all 5 steps together and we're going to do it in about 5 seconds. Stand up or sit up. What's step number 1? Always the base, right? Kegel. Suck your belly button into your spine. Raise your ribs so they're pointing up this way. Raise them up. All right? Bring your shoulders up to your ears, put them back, and drop them down. Just let them sit there. And then put your chin back over your spine. And now, find a way to be at peace with this because you're pretty nicely aligned. You just look like a stellar group here right now. So as you sit down, I want you to take your bum and put it into the back of the chair and stay nicely aligned and sit in a nice aligned conformation. All right, so here we have a nice retracted chin. If you don't know how to do this, stand up against the wall and do exactly what this gentleman is doing. So here we have an example with this little girl. Unfortunately, Dad is telling her that he's about to leave for war, which is why she's pretty indignant about the whole situation. But lovely, nice spinal alignment. Would you agree? she didn't listen to this lecture. She just does this. It's lovely. I love this picture. So some examples of core stability exercises would be the bird dog. All right, so here we have on knees and arms here, and you bring the leg out so that it's in a straight line with the arm. I'd love to see that arm up just a little bit more. And let me tell you, if you try this for the first time, it's a very simple exercise in theory, but I guarantee you, unless somebody is looking at you, you will have no idea where your arm or your leg is. All right, you'll need somebody to tell you you're not straight. And most of you will not be able to get your arm up here, all right, because your chest muscles are going to be so tight from living your life like this that to raise it up is going to be very difficult. So what do you need to do to be able to raise that arm up? You need to stretch your chest muscles out a little bit, right? So this is the beginning of learning to stabilize your core with some movement, because what you have to do in order to keep this leg out here and keep that arm there is make sure that this core is tight before you lift the arm or the leg off the ground. So you have to do exactly what you just did a minute ago. You have to tighten your core, and then you lift your arm up, and then you lift your leg up. All right? Just like when you get out of this chair at the end of this talk, you need to tighten your core first, and then you need to stand up. Does that make sense? Okay. Here are some other examples, and you can see this woman here is doing a bird dog, and she's doing what she can do right now, but that leg's not straight yet because she needs to do a little bit more back strengthening and stretching her chest out so she can get that arm up there, but she's giving it a good old try. Here's another example of a back strengthening exercise with a nice aligned core. And here's another example of a core exercise where he's just standing in place and moving. That's a weighted ball, a medicine ball, from one side to the other and keeping a nicely aligned core. This is a more advanced exercise. Here's where we begin. Here's where we progress to. When we can do this nicely, then we start to add a little bit of movement to it. Here's an example, very accessible. Get on, we call these physio balls, sitting on the ball, but I would encourage you to first start with a chair, not a ball that moves. But then once you can do this with a straight spine, leg out straight, and you can do this very stably in a chair, then you go to a ball, which is a little less stable, and for you to keep this ball from rolling around, this core has to be very tight. So you don't move to the ball until you're very confident that your core is tight on the chair. All right, and this is I call these the ABC exercises because I think they're great for everybody, very accessible for ME/CFS patients. I don't know how well they're projecting up there. They look great here, but I'm not so sure up here. But you're laying face down on the floor. This is the Y. So in this case, the individual's looking at the floor and lifting their arms up. So lifting them up this way off the floor and just holding them. No weights in their arms, okay? You don't need weights for these. You just need to tighten your core from the bottom up and then lift your arms up and hold it for 5 seconds is a good start, all right? Same thing for this exercise. This is the T with the arms out to the side. This is the W with the arms there. You can see why they're called Y, T, W, and L. Yes, there's the L there, with the arms out to the side down here. These are wonderful core exercises that help to strengthen particularly the back side of your core and will help with your posture as well. So the way that you should progress through a structured physical activity program with this illness is to begin with core stability exercises. And in some cases, stretching may be necessary because you may be very tight through here. You may be very tight through the hamstrings. If you're hypermobile, that may not be the issue, and I would say don't do the stretching part. But you begin with this, and stage 1 of these exercises may actually last 3 months for you to learn how to stabilize your core really well. I'm going to say 3 months. It might vary. It might be 1 month. It might be 5 months. But to really understand and learn how to stabilize your core well in these different positions, the Ys, the Ts, on the ball, etc., it could take 3 months. All right, stage 2, you would add a little resistance activity. So you might use a TheraBand while you're on the ball, seated on the ball. and stretch with a TheraBand exercise. These are not aerobic exercises, all right? And that might be another 3 months. It might be 5 months. It depends on you, and your feedback will always be, how did I feel the next day? If you can say, I felt restored the next day, I felt pretty good, then what you're doing is working well within your energy abilities, energy-producing abilities. If you feel worse and you're exacerbating any symptoms, then you're doing too much. Stage 3 would be adding interval activities where you're doing more concentrated activity and then doing more relaxed activity or recovery after that. And then hopefully those activities are activities that are mimicking your daily activities. So things that you have to do at home, walking to the bus stop if that's the case, things that will over time improve as you become, your core becomes more stable and you're able to tolerate lifting lighter weights for a period of time, and your legs will get stronger and you can carry your body around more efficiently. So when this means of structured physical activity is working for you, you have developed improved core stability, and your strength has improved so that you can do activities of daily living. And as I said, 3 months may be pretty typical for the first stage. And your feedback of how this is going for you is always your symptoms, how you respond to the exercise. Do you recover normally from it? And if not, then you modify what you're doing. And then once you get past that first stage, you can add more bouts of activity with recovery in between. So now, to make sense of this, I want to remind you that the energy system that works for you is your short-term energy system. So you're not doing these activities for 15, 20 minutes. You're doing 10 seconds with 30 seconds of rest. And eventually you might get to the point where you can do 30 seconds of a position with 90 seconds of rest. And maybe you do that 3 times. And then maybe you do it later in the day. All right? But you don't go out for a 3-mile walk or run. That energy system is not working. So we have to do the activity that works within that short-term energy system. So 1 to 30 seconds or 45 seconds maximum. You start at the low end, and over time you start to work it up to the 30 to 40 seconds. So some things that will help you with this. If you know anything, if any of you have done any exercise evaluation and you know when you start to shift into the energy response that's not working well for you, and you know what heart rate corresponds to that, and I know there are some people in the room who do know that, we call that your heart rate at anaerobic threshold, then wearing an activity monitor like a heart rate monitor might be helpful. And I would suggest that you should wear that anyway, because you're all going to learn, if you pay attention to this heart rate monitor, you're going to learn that exercises that work for you work when you're at a certain heart rate or below. And exercises that are not working for you are happening when you exceed a certain heart rate. And so by trial and error, you're probably going to figure that out. And the other thing that you should keep in mind, how many have ever seen a perceived exertion scale before, an RPE scale? Okay, we call it rating of perceived exertion. So there are a few different versions of this, but it may be difficult to read. But down here it says, I'm watching TV and eating bonbons. Okay, so if I said, how hard do you feel you're working, you might say I'm down here right now, okay? And then up here it says, I think I'm going to die or something like that. I can't read it from here, but this is not where we want you. So what we actually want you to do, because of the energy systems that are not working for you, we actually want you to stay right in here. So if you ask yourself the question, how hard do I feel I'm working right now? You should be saying nothing more than I'm comfortable and I can maintain this pace all day long. I'd rather not have you at watching TV and eating bonbons because probably you're not doing anything there. But you should be right here, or I'm comfortable, but I'm breathing a little bit harder. And this is when you're 3 or 6 months into your exercise program. But you really don't want to be above this right here. Because the way you need to produce energy to do this is not working for you. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Okay. All right. I just threw this up here quickly because, of course, it's 2015, and the new jewelry that you find everybody wearing is called, the Fitbit or the Jawbone or whatever. And so there are many of these, there are many versions of these activity monitors out there. But what you might want to look for if you decide to wear this, because a lot of people don't like the chest strap to monitor their heart rate, they get sick of it. And some of these activity monitors that you wear on your wrist will actually monitor heart rate, and they'll actually track sleep. And so if you wanted to look at your sleep, periods of sleep, and also track heart rate, then you should look for some of these devices that have those capabilities. But they're pretty good now, and they're pretty accurate, and there's the website, so you can pick that up pretty easily if you want to look at this price comparison here. And then lastly, just to start to summarize this, the structured physical activity that does work, over time you will find it to be empowering because you will be able to move your body around more efficiently. You will find that you can do more activities of daily living without exacerbating your symptoms. And the goal is to not be on your energy roller coaster where you feel good, you do a lot of stuff, and then the next day or the next 3 days you crash and pay for it. We don't want that to happen. We want you to be like this. All right? That is the goal of this kind of activity program. So in terms of energy conservation strategies, it's hugely important to pay attention to how you feel, to work with about a 1 to 3 or a 1 to 4, maybe for some of you a 1 to 5 work to rest ratio. So remember, the work ratio is going to be the short-term thing, right? Because that's the energy system that works, right? 30 seconds, 20 seconds. So you work 20 seconds doing your Y exercise, all right? Then you recover 3 times or 4 times that amount, and then you do it again. Does that make sense? And you do 3 of those, and then you do your T exercises. Or maybe you take a 10-minute break or a 20-minute break, or you do your T's later in the day. But you stick with that ratio. Okay. So I'll finish up here with my top 10 energy-saving tips. If you're familiar with the Letterman show, David Letterman retired last year after 33 years, and these celebrities came up with their own top 10 for David Letterman, and they were pretty funny, but I don't remember what they were, so here you go for mine. Number 10, make the bed while you're in it, or don't make it at all. I don't know how important that is to you, but consider sitting in the bed, pulling the covers up, and not getting out and running around your bed. Take it with you. Have a device or a basket or a backpack where you can carry the important things with you throughout the day, and you have to not go fishing for them. I have these lovely glasses called click readers because I always put them down and I don't know where they are, and I'm running around looking for them, and these stay on my neck 24/7. Well, not while I'm in bed, but you get the point. All right? Instead of toweling off when you come out of the bath or the shower, just put a terry cloth robe on and let that soak up the water. Consider how you wear your hair and what kind of clothes you wear, wrinkle-free clothes, not high-maintenance hairstyles. And this kind of looks old school, but you get the point. Use an answering machine and monitor your calls before you pick up that phone. Pack groceries in a smart way so that you can come home, get the stuff in the freezer and the refrigerator that need to be put away, and leave the rest for later. Or find a store that delivers. Cook ahead so that it supplies you for several meals, not just for one meal at a time. Get a disabled parking placard. I don't know what that involves in this country, but it's accessible. Pardon me? You can't? It's very difficult. Okay, docs, write a prescription for your patients because they need those. And then prioritize. Decide what's important. Structured physical activity, like we just talked about, is important. And walking from the far end of the parking lot into the grocery store is not important. So get a handicap parking permit. And then learn to say yes or no. Don't let people be energy zappers in your life. If you can't do it, don't do it. So here are my key concepts I hope you derived from this presentation. Appropriate physical activity is restorative, 1-3 or 1-4 ratio for you, maybe 1-5 to begin with. Physical activity needs to be restorative. It needs to be functional to help you in your daily activities. Don't forget how to breathe. This is really important. Make room for structured physical activity every day and part of your other daily activities. Think circularly, and what I mean by that is that 1-3, 1-4 ratio. You do something, you recover. You do something else, you recover. You do something else, you recover. That's circular. Not, I have task A, B, C, and D to do before lunchtime. Can't work that way anymore. Doesn't work. Core activity, core stability is key for you. Structured physical activity, so gradually over time you improve your ability to do physical activities and follow your own energy conserving tips. And by all means, please give me new ones if you have them. And thank you very much for your time and your participation.